Hey guys, welcome back to the channel where today I'm working on the wife's car. It's a 2012 BMW 535i Xdrive, and we're putting a coolant bottle in it. I replaced the cap a while back and it still drips a little coolant out, and it appears to be leaking right out of the side of that coolant bottle. It seems to be cracked along the seam. So first things first, we pulled off that engine support using a 15 and 16 millimeter socket, and I pulled out the intake snorkel. Then I get my pick tool out and I pull the wire up on the coolant hose itself and remove that. So for the next step, I got my T25 Torx out, and we're going to go ahead and remove this bolt on the power steering reservoir. There's also two 10 millimeter bolts, one in the power steering reservoir and one in the coolant bottle, and these things are kind of connected together. So I pull those two bolts out, and then I'll move the camera out of the way and get the lower radiator hose. There's just the one in the top and one on the bottom, and they use a little wire clip to hold them in. You just pull it out with a pick tool, and then you can go ahead and I used a screwdriver here to push the hose off of the coolant bottle. And then I didn't drain the coolant, I just let it fall out of the tank. You didn't lose a whole lot. It was like about a half a gallon, maybe a little bit more. And so yeah, I got the two hoses off. I get the last bolt out of the power steering reservoir here, and then voila, you have the coolant tank here and the power steering reservoir. Should be able to lift them right up and remove them. Remove the coolant tank. There's also a coolant level sensor on the bottom of the coolant tank that needs to be unplugged. You'll see me unplug that here when I lift it up. Alright, so here's the sensor I was talking about. Just squeeze that connector to unplug it. The bottom of the tank has like a little rubber V that just sits over the pinched metal part in the inner fender there. And then the top, you see the power steering reservoir hooks into it. And I'm going to go ahead and remove the rubber grommet off of the stock tank and put it on my replacement here. And then we can go ahead and put things back together. There's not a whole lot of tools required for this job. I had the 15 and 16 millimeter sockets to remove the engine support brace there, and then the 10 millimeter and the T25, and I use my long flathead just kind of poke and pry with, and pick tools for removing the clips for the coolant hoses. And then on reassembly, I'll use a pick tool to try and get that intake snorkel lined up right. But all in all, it's not a whole lot of tools required, not too big of a job, and I think you'll find if you own one of these that someday you'll have to put one of these reservoirs in it. Alright, so we got our two 10mm bolts and our Torx bolt installed. We clipped on the radiator hoses, the top and bottom. You see them doing the bottom one here. Don't forget I plugged in that coolant level switch before I dropped the tank down in there, and clipped the power steering reservoir into the new tank so that everything kind of drops in there as one piece. I'm just double checking to make sure my lower hose is on, and we'll go ahead and pour in some coolant. BMW uses their blue coolant here. I just got some compatible blue coolant from the auto parts store. Top it up. Since I didn't lose all that much coolant, I just topped it up here, gave the hose a few squeezes, and I didn't do a full coolant bleed procedure, and I didn't hook it up to the scan tool or to ISTA to run the water pump and bleed the cooling system out, because you really don't lose a lot of coolant. And I was able to top it up, had her drive it for a day or two, and then I checked it again and it was all good. So after pouring coolant in, I put the intake snorkel back on, just kind of make sure it clips in the front. It's kind of a bit of a puzzle to get it to clip into place, and then you gotta force it forward in order to get it to line up. Might be easier to pull the air box off, but I didn't want to go that far, so I made it work. And I'll just go ahead and put on this brace, the two bolts, and tighten those down. And then I'll just start the car up and watch the water pump move and check the coolant level before I go ahead and call it a done deal. I don't show screwing the cap back on, but make sure you put the cap back on. You'll definitely overheat it without it, and you'll make a mess. If you like this video, I'll maybe do more on this car, on my E39 and on my E53. So go ahead and click subscribe and stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching.